I'll never forget the day I met Carter. Growing up in a conservative Christian household, being gay was never even on my radar. I dated girls here and there, but always felt like something was off, like I was just going through the motions. Anyway, I had just moved into this new apartment complex for my sophomore year of college. On move-in day, I bumped into this guy in the hallway, tall, ginger hair, stylishly dressed. "Hey man, I'm Carter. Just moved in next door," he said with a warm smile, extending his hand. "Oh hey, I'm Mike," I replied, shaking his hand. His grip was firm, but his touch incredibly soft. Right off the bat, I could tell Carter was different. He carried himself with incredible confidence, an aura of sophisticated charm. As we made small talk, he mentioned being excited to let his freak flag fly now that he was out of his small hometown. "I'm gay as a goose and proud of it, baby," he proclaimed with a fabulous hair flip and bright smile. I felt myself blush a little. Up until that point, I had honestly never met an openly gay person before. Carter seemed to take my awkwardness as discomfort. "Oh, don't worry, sweetie, I don't bite, unless you're into that sort of thing," he said with a wink before sashaying down the hall. I watched him go, feeling strangely flustered. Little did I know that chance hallway encounter would end up flipping my entire world upside down. Over the next few weeks, I kept running into Carter around the apartment complex. Each time we crossed paths, he greeted me with that same warm smile and light banter. "Well, hello there, handsome," he purred one day as we passed in the lobby. "You're looking sexier than a fried chicken dinner today." I felt my cheeks flush as he gave me an exaggerated wink and continued on his way. His flirtatious remarks both flustered and intrigued me. Part of me wondered if he was just an incorrigible flirt who talked that way to everyone. But there was an unmistakable heat behind his gaze that made me suspect his interest went beyond friendly teasing. The more I interacted with Carter, the more I found myself noticing things about him, the way his slim-fit shirts accentuated his trim waistline, the confidence he carried himself with, the charismatic ease of his speech and mannerisms. One night, he posted a snap story of himself panicking as smoke poured from his kitchen. On an impulse, I replied, "Need some help over there, Bernie Sanders." Carter's response was immediate, a strapping young chef. "By all means, come tame this kitchen fire." I'll admit, part of me wanted to impress Carter with my culinary skills, but another part felt inexplicably drawn to him, champing at the bit for another chance to interact. As I made my way to his door, my heart pounded with anxiety and something else I couldn't quite put my finger on. Little did I know, I was headed for a night that would change everything. I'll never forget walking into Carter's apartment that night. The warm lighting, the sophisticated decor, the faint aroma of his cologne. It all enveloped me in this inexplicably sensual atmosphere. As I got to work cooking, Carter watched me with this intense, smoldering gaze. Part of me felt self-conscious under his studious observation, but another part liked the sense of being watched by him. "You're quite the Renaissance man, Mikey," Carter purred, sipping a glass of wine, a culinary genius and easy on the eyes. How deliciously unfair to the rest of us, mere mortals. I felt my cheeks flush at the compliment. Carter's flirtatious banter rendered me flustered yet craving more. Each purr and wink sent an unfamiliar tingle down my spine. As we sat down to the meal I prepared, Carter's bare foot accidentally grazed my ankle under the table. I felt a shudder run through me at his touch. Our eyes met, and I was captivated by the molten heat in his stare, my body suddenly electric with unfamiliar want. Over dinner, Carter's words took on an increasingly charged undertone. The way he described the flavors, rich, decadent, sinful, it felt almost sensual, like he was tasting more than just the food. After we cleaned up, Carter drew me into the living room for drinks. As we sipped our cocktails, the conversation grew more intimate, more personal. Carter had this immense artistic passion that captivated me. Before I knew it, we were sitting in silent tension, my gaze locked on the gentle rise and fall of his chest. In that moment, I wanted nothing more than to feel that warmth, that softness against my own skin. I'm not sure what came over me in that heated moment on Carter's couch, but the next thing I knew, I was leaning in, closing the smoldering distance between us. Carter's eyes widened momentarily in surprise. Then they fluttered shut as our lips met in a lingering, exploratory. At first it was soft, tentative, but as the shock subsided, the kiss deepened. Carter's hand caressed my cheek as our mouths moved with heated fervor. I'd kissed girls before, sure, but this was an entirely new level of passion, of need. Every brush of Carter's lips against mine shot fireworks through my body. When finally broke apart, we were both breathless, our chests heavy. Carter gazed at me with a mixture of lust and wonder, his pupils blown wide. "Well, hello there, Mikey," he purred in a tone dripping with want. I had an inkling, but I didn't dare let myself believe. He trailed off, drawing me into another scorching kiss. This one quickly turned heated, hands roaming over plains of muscle and soft skin as Carter laid me back onto the couch cushions. Part of me felt overwhelmed by the unfamiliar desires coursing through me, but a larger part felt an intense rightness, like this had been simmering under the surface all along. As Carter's lips blazed a trail of fire down my neck, I surrendered to the passion, letting my hands explore the body undulating against mine. In that heated blur of ecstasy and discovery, I knew my life would never be the same. The next morning I awoke with a start, instantly aware of the warm body tangled with mine. Memories of the previous night came flooding back in a torrent: Carter's heated kisses, our frantic shedding of clothes, the slick slide of sweat-slicked skin. I felt a confusing swirl of shame, exhilaration, and insatiable desire churning in my gut. Part of me couldn't believe what I'd done, how deeply I'd crossed a line I never thought I'd approach. But another part craved more of that electrifying intimacy. Carter must have sensed my inner turmoil as he began tenderly stroking my arm. "Hey," he murmured in that velvet tone, "where'd you go just now?" Yesterday I averted my gaze, unable to meet his piercing stare. "I've never with a guy before. I don't know what I'm feeling." Carter gently gripped my chin, turning my face towards his. The tenderness in his expression made my heart flutter. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed, baby. What we have, it's rare and special." His thumb caressed my cheek. "I've been attracted to you from the first moment I saw you. Your kindness, your passion, that delicious muscular build." He punctuated the compliment with a lingering kiss that sent trembles through me. When he broke away, I found myself chasing his lips with shameless need. "But don't overthink this, Mikey," he purred, tangling his fingers in my hair. "Just feel it." As Carter's mouth found mine again in a heated clash of tongues and teeth, I let myself get swept up in the dizzying tide of newfound desire. Whatever this was, I didn't want it to end. Over the next few weeks, Carter and I were inseparable. When we weren't tangled up in his sheets, we were attached at the hip, studying together at the library, hitting up house parties, even just grabbing meals on campus. At first, I felt self-conscious being so openly affectionate with another guy. Carter seemed to sense my unease, draping an arm around my shoulders or stealing flirtatious kisses when no one was looking. "Baby, you have nothing to be ashamed of," he murmured one evening as we strolled across the plaza, his arm snug around my waist. "Loving who you love is one of the most powerful things in this world." I felt his words deeply, but part of me still grappled with the internalized prejudices of my upbringing. Thankfully, Carter was endlessly patient, giving me the space and reassurance I needed. Our connection only continued to deepen as we explored this dizzying new aspect of our relationship. Carter awoke a passionate, sensual side of me I never knew existed, and he lavished me with the spiritual nourishment of true intimacy. "You're a profound, complicated, gorgeous soul, Mikey," he praised one lazy morning as we exchanged unhurried kisses. "And I'm discovering new, intoxicating layers of you every day." Hearing the reverence in his tone made me feel truly seen for the first time in my life. Carter validated all the parts of myself I'd been conditioned to suppress or feel ashamed of. With him, I was free to embrace all the wildness and depth of my authenticity. And in doing so, I experienced soul-shaking passion unlike anything I'd ever known. So a couple months into our whirlwind romance, Carter insisted on taking me out for a proper date night. He picked me up looking devastatingly handsome in a tailored suit, my heart fluttering at his bright smile. "Looking delicious as always, gorgeous," he purred, kissing me deeply. The evening passed in a blur of fine dining, candlelight, and Carter's shoulder brushing mine under the table. His hand found my thigh as the wine flowed, giving it an undeniably heated squeeze. "Let's get out of here," he murmured throatily in my ear. "I want you all to myself." My skin broke out in goosebumps at the unmistakable want in his tone. We could scarcely keep our hands off each other in the Uber back to his place. As soon as we were through the door, Carter had me pinned against the wall, his mouth hot and insistent on mine. We shed our clothes in a heated frenzy, hands roaming like we were trying to map every swell and plane. In the bedroom, Carter drew me down onto the sheets in a heated clash of bare skin. His hands, his mouth, they worshipped every inch of me with an almost spiritual reverence. "You're a masterpiece, Mikey," he rasped against my shoulder before trailing scorching kisses down my chest. "Poetry in motion, baby." I shuddered at the dark velvet of his voice, the artistry of his touch raising waves of dizzying ecstasy. As Carter's name spilled shamelessly from my lips, I knew with every fiber that this he-heo was what I'd been missing. Afterwards, we lay sated and intertwined, Carter cradling me against his chest. With his heartbeat lulling me, I'd never felt more basked in acceptance and intimacy. "I love you," he murmured, pressing his lips to my brow. In that moment, I knew he was my wildest dream realized. As our romance deepened over the following months, I noticed a monumental shift within myself. The shame and confusion I'd once felt seemed to melt away, replaced by an unshakable sense of contentment. With Carter, I was free to simply exist as my authentic self, quirks and idiosyncrasies embraced. He awoke parts of me I'd suppressed for so long. My creativity, my passion, my spirituality, his mere presence was intoxicating. "You make me feel reborn, baby," I murmured one night as we lay tangled in the sheets, his fingers gently tracing patterns on my skin, like I'm finally allowing myself to breathe for the first time. Carter gazed at me with those soulful hazel eyes, his expression one of pure adoration. "That's because you're finally living in your truth, Mike, embracing all those beautifully complex layers of yourself without apology." He leaned in for a lingering kiss that left me dizzy and aching for more of his warmth. His essence? Our lovemaking that night was unhurried, exploratory, a meditation in getting lost in the pure sensation of tangled limbs and breathy gas. As Carter's body moved in an achingly sensual rhythm against mine, I'd never felt more alive, more present. "You're everything to me," I choked out amidst the heated frenzy, overcome with the profundity of my feelings for this man. Carter's movement stilled for a beat, his eyes shining. Then he was kissing me deeply, reverently, like a man unraveling before something sacred. "And you, my dearest Mikey, are my wildest dream given breathtaking form." With those words lingering in the air, he brought us both to a shattering, transcendent release. As the haze of euphoria slowly cleared, I knew with every fiber that my heart was utterly, inescapably his. In the blissful haze after making love, Carter lay tracing the contours of my face with a featherlight touch. I felt simultaneously electrified by his exploration, yet completely at peace basking in his rapt attention. "You know, when we first met, I never could have imagined how deeply I'd come to cherish you," he murmured, eyes shining with open adoration. "You've helped me embrace all the pieces of myself I was afraid to love." I felt his words like a full-body ache. Carter had been my intrepid guide out of the inhibited prison of my upbringing and into the vibrant freedom of authenticity. His courage, his passion, they'd given me the strength to bloom into my true self without apology. Drawing him into a searing kiss, I tried to convey the ferocious depth of feeling that threatened to consume me from the inside out. "You've been the key to unlocking everything I never let myself feel, Carter. My desire, my artistry, my wildest dreams." My voice caught with overwhelmed emotion. "My life has forever been altered by your light." Carter's brilliant smile outshone any sun. Pulling me flush against his warmth, he held me like I was precious phenomena to be cherished. "Then let's spend forever basking in it together, gorgeous." His fingers traced patterns of promise down my spine. You and me against the world. In that heated cocoon of intimacy, I envisioned the two of us embarking on an impassioned adventure of love, laughter, and chasing every ecstatic dream. With Carter's unshakable devotion as my anchor, I knew there was no want or wild wonder that life could throw at us that we couldn't conquer together. "I'm yours entirely," I vowed in a throatly, sincere whisper as our mouths found their intoxicating reunion. Now and for always. As our bodies rejoined in a frantic, desirous clash, I allowed the scorching waves of passion to eclipse every atom of my being. Past and future be damned. In Carter's smoldering embrace, I had finally found nirvana. In the euphoric haze after our lovemaking, I lay utterly spent yet simmering with contentment. Carter's arms enveloped me in a warmth that suffused every cell, his lips brushing tender devotions across my salt-kissed skin. For the first time in my life, I felt entirely seen, known, cherished down to the deepest strata of my soul. With Carter, there was no need to hide, to temper any part of myself. He celebrated my idiosyncrasies, my complexities, my passion and intensity with unapologetic adoration. As his fingers traced patterns of worship along my arm, he gazed at this incredible man and marveled at the inexplicable cosmic alignment that had led us into each other's lives. What seemed mere months ago, I was yet a closed bud, my vibrant petals furled defensively inward. Now, so under the radiant heat of Carter's love, I'd finally bloomed into an audacious, intoxicating flower. "Hey," he murmured huskily, tipping my chin up to meet his molten stare. "Where'd you go just now, gorgeous?" I tried to convey the enormity of feeling swirling through me, the bone-deep peace, the soul-binding reverence, the unshakable certainty that he was my destiny personified. "I'm just marveling at you, Addis," I managed in a ragged whisper, at the vividness of emotions I'd never let myself fathom before you exploded into my life in brilliant, livid color. Carter's smile in that moment could have powered entire cities with its radiance. Cupping my cheek with infinite tenderness, he simply gazed at me for a loaded stretch. When at last he spoke, his voice was rough with overwhelmed emotion. "You, Michael, are my wildest dream given rapturous form beyond anything I could have conceived. My art, my passion, my very reason to breathe. We came together in a heated eclipse of tangled limbs and blazing kisses, our joining transcending anything so earthbound as mere desire or lust. In Carter's scorching, reverent embrace, I touched the face of the divine and glimpsed eternity. As shuddering waves of euphoria finally crested, Carter gathered me to his sweat-slicked chest like I was the singular precious thing in all his cosmos. I love you unto forever ending, my soulmate, he vowed with husky sincerity, my guardian and guiding light. In that heated sanctum of tangled sheets and twined heartbeats, I knew I had at last found the home my spirit had forever ached for. Nothing could sever the twin truth of our souls ever again. In the rapturous aftermath, I lay spent yet vibrating with euphoria. Carter's life formed curved protectively around me. His lips trailed scorching devotions across the slope of my shoulder as our ragged breath slowly evened out. Part of me still marveled at how naturally, how inevitably we had fallen into this sacred communion of bodies and souls, as if we were celestial coals, separated across eons until some cosmic force finally drew us into our inescapable collision. Carter's fingers traced patterns of worship along my ribcage, raising trails of delicious shivers. You are the most exquisite creature to ever grace my world, Mikey, he murmured with husky reverence. I turned my face into the curve of his neck, breathing in the heady amalgam of skin and musk and sheer Carter that was more intoxicating than anything distilled. In the smoldering aftermath of our lovemaking, I felt every wall. Every inhibition I'd ever walled my heart behind finally obliterated to rubble. I don't think you'll ever understand the seismic shift you've created in me, Carter. My voice was low but thrumming with feeling. You've awoken parts of myself I never knew existed, let alone let myself feel. His hands roamed my body in a scorching caress as he drew me impossibly closer, seeming to drink in my very essence. Oh, I think I have an inkling, gorgeous. Carter's tone held depths of profoundly ancient soulfulness. You and I were survivors of numbing cages that tried to dim our blazing truth. Fire flickered behind his gaze as his stare bored into me. But not anymore. Now we burn defiant, two radiant phoenixes arisen from the ashes to illuminate the world with our passion. I was overcome by the sheer intensity of emotion that swelled within me. This soul-shaking connection with Carter, it transcended anything my human existence had prepared me for. With him, I had a purpose, a truth to finally embrace in sovereignty. My mouth found his in a voracious, searing kiss that seared away any remnants of the prison that had shackled my spirit for so long. As Carter's hands roamed my body in a scorching reclamation, I allowed the blazing truth of my desires to engulf my entirety. I'm yours, Carter, I rasped with a conviction that struck to the core of me. Every atom, every impassioned dream and ecstasy yet to come, it all belongs to you. Our bodies rejoined in a fevered, desirous clash, twin infernos at last allowed to burn as one in defiant, glorious blaze. There would be no more denying, no more dimming of our truth. I had beheld the rapturous face of eternity in Carter's arm. In the smoldering afterglow, old Carter gathered me against his chest like I was the single most precious artifact in existence. His fingers traced patterns of fervent devotion along my sweat-slicked skin as our ragged breath slowly fell into sync. To think, I almost let fear and small-minded prejudice blind me to this exquisite truth, he murmured in a tone scratched with overwhelmed awe. If I hadn't taken a chance on letting you in. He didn't need to finish the thought. We both knew the soul-searing intimacy we had discovered together was too sacred to be squandered. Our union transcended anything so earthbound as mere romance or lust. It was a soul-binding, a fusing of the myriad facets of ourselves we had each denied for far too long. Turning my face into the curve of his neck, I breathed in the heady, intoxicating essence that was purely Carter. My anchor, my wildest rebirth into the audacious truth I had suppressed for decades. You gave me the courage to shed every inhibition, every falsehood I'd let encase me rasped against his satin skin. With you, there's no need for apologies or dimming my most fervid dream. Carter's embrace tightened with an almost fierce desperation, like he could will us into an ality inseparable. When at last he spoke, his tone was choked yet shook with profoundly ancient wonder. We're twin meteors clashing into existence, Mikey, newborn from the ashes of meager half-lives to burn together with incandescent truth. His mouth found mine in a soul-scorching kiss, my eternal blaze given form radiant beyond any mortal's wildest imagining. The horizon between us swelled into an all-consuming firestorm. Our hands and lips roamed in a fevered reclamation, demolishing any remnants of the cages that had once imprisoned our wild, vibrant spirit. When we finally parted, our chests were having an exquisite synchronicity, our souls resonating at the same searing frequency. Carter's eyes glittered with an intensity that could have incinerated cities. This connection we share, it howls with the harmonics of eternity, gorgeous, and I'll worship at its altar until forever blackening. Drawing me down atop him, he swallowed my gasp of pleasure in an eclipse of searing, infinite oneness. In Carter's reverent embrace, I was subsumed into raptures beyond any mortal realm, beloved and sacrosanct as a deity. In the waning hours before dawn, I lay awake simply watching the rise and fall of Carter's chest in repose. His features were limned in ethereal softness, those riotous curls tousled across the pillow like a living sculpture. In the quiet stillness, I could scarcely wrap my mind around the seismic shifts that had rocked my world since that first fateful encounter. From the first heated meeting of our gazes, some ancient cosmic reckoning had been set in motion, as if two celestial bodies, blazing yet long adrift, had finally crashed into their fated conjunction after eons of wandering in cold darkness. In Carter's arms, I had experienced a wildfire rebirth, shedding every inhibition and falsehood that had kept my spirit's truth shackled. My fingers traced the contours of his slumbering form with weightless reverence. So much of my life before Carter had been mirrored in shame, repression, a fracturing of my very essence to appeasing societal mores. But this man, this fearless embodiment of passion and truth, he had shattered those meager shackles and shown me the incandescent glory of self-sovereignty. As the first fragile threads of dawn seeped through the curtains, Carter stirred and blinked up at me with heavy-lidded adoration. His palm cradled my cheek as he simply gazed at me in an awed reverie. "There you are," he rasped, voice husky yet brimming with achingly tender awe. My forever North Star blazing back at me. Emotion swelled in my chest as I leaned into his touch, like a man beholding his deliverance. In Carter's ardent stare, I was eternally seen, known, cherished in all my complexities. "You rescued me from such a half-life of dimming myself," I confessed in a whisper, choked with profound gratitude. "Showed me the glory of accepting all my layers, no matter how messy or ecstatic." A smile curved those beautiful lips as Carter drew me into the scorching temptation of his embrace. When our mouths finally parted, we were both rendered breathless from the sheer enormity of emotion between us. "Then let's spend every ecstasy and anguish yet to come writing our shared masterpiece together, Mikey," he vowed with a solemnity that struck to my very bones. Unapologetic and burned into the cosmos as one forever radiant. Later that morning, as we ambled hand in hand across campus, I felt fearless and newborn. The unabashed tenderness in the way Carter's thumb stroked over my knuckles spoke of quiet yet unshakable claiming. No longer would I hide or temper my truth for others' fragilities. In Carter's blinding light, I was finally free to blossom into the wild, passionately complex beauty I had been meticulously sculpted to embody all along. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind as Carter and I joyfully settled into our new realities and our old couple on campus. There was a giddy freedom in moving through the world without pretense, my wonderful boyfriend proudly by my side. Carter's influence shored up my self-confidence in embracing every nuance and quirk of my identity. My religious upbringing that I had distanced myself from, even my look, Carter adored it all with ardent appreciation, watching his soft smiles as he smoothed my hair whenever I fretted over posting some commentary on social media. The simple act of holding his hand in public, walking proudly in daylight, the way I had under the cover of night, it was precious. Our entire social circles became interwoven. As we threw off the last gasps of internalized shame, Carter never let me retreat into my formerly repressed nature, opening me to a whirlwind of bold, colorful personalities without judgment. A welcome breath of fresh air to contrast my formerly single-faceted mindset's walls. Lavenders, Butches, our local queer kebab shop owners. I discovered an underground of the city I'd been utterly blind to before. And Carter lavished me, too, with his brilliant mind and rich experiences. Nights discussing BDSM practices or the parallels between ancient Greek pederasty and the modern nuances of queerness, challenging me to read Reguti's essays, Mary Grisby's woke hot takes, to understand the realities behind our community's struggles and make my voice heard. But as eye-opening as the cultural and intellectual discovery alongside Carter has been, his greatest gift was always the looking glass to my heart. Those days of giddy beginnings when I was in aggressive, willful denial and the subsequent season of wrestling with my identity, Carter mirrored my depths back to me, turned his gaze toward the intricate and sometimes ugly realities of my imperfect selfhood when I hid from my reflection. Of every crevice and intimate angle of who I am, when I had been taught everything about myself that made me different or difficult was a shameful thing. With Carter's courage and sometimes uncomfortable candor, did I find lifelines to the person I'd always been underneath? Did I cut the damning strings of that shamed Christian child? That kid who hunkered and stayed silent and small in the face of friends and family's derision and to correct me. The young adult who found safety in numbness rather than vulnerability. The closed rosebud begins that way, distressed under the freezing winds, layered and rigid and damped under the conviction of its own cultural programming. With Carter's gaze and spirit, my closed petals blushed into color and peeked outward at long last, accepted and coaxed toward the fulfillment of my true nature. Petals unfurled and burnished into vibrant splendor, the rose releases its own potent fragrance, finally awake to its beauty. As I stand here today, taking in the breathtaking view from the hilltop lookout, I'm struck by a profound sense of peace and belonging. The sprawling city skyline stretches out before me, vibrant and pulsing with life's rhythms, but it's the reassuring weight of Carter's arm looped around my waist that centers me most of all. This place holds such significance for us. Atin was here on this very spot, surrounded by nature's splendor, that we first uttered those weighty words to one another. I love an admission that ultimately sparked the wildfire transition out of our former half-lived existences and into these vibrantly true forms. I turned my head to drink in the sight of Carter's profile, so dear and achingly familiar, yet still sending tremors through me after all this time. His riotous curls are being tossed by the crisp breeze. Those features I've mapped with devoted lips and fingers limned in golden serenity. Sensing my gaze, he meets it with a look of such profound, rootless adoration that my breath catches. What is it, my eternal blaze? Carter's voice is husky yet brimming with tenderness. I just shake my head in wonderment, struggling to find words for the kaleidoscope of emotions swirling within me. How to encapsulate the sheer gratitude, the bone-deep peace, the utter sense of being seen down to my wildest dream. Finally, I settle for pulling him into a soul-searing kiss, trying to convey everything I feel for this man who set my spirit ablaze and loved me fearlessly into becoming. When we finally part, we're both flushed and smiling with almost giddy content. Just savoring this moment, this view, this life with you, I murmur roughly, who I get to be because of the light you showed. Carter's fingers tenderly trace the curve of my cheek as he gazes at me with unbridled awe, like I'm some miraculous phenomenon to be cherished. My Mikey in full bloom at last, he breathes, reverence ringing in every syllable, radiant and thriving as you are always divinely sculpted to be, to this breathtaking embrace. Surrounded by the majesty of nature that has borne witness to our scorching metamorphosis, I feel profound peace finally settle over me. I am, at last, home, held eternally in the endless blaze of Carter's love, burning as my most wildly authentic self into infinite tomorrows. No longer am I a wilted bud constricted by the freezing winds of shame or repression's numbing grays. Like the most vivid wildflower, I bloom in ecstatic color, gifting my truest essence out into the world to be embraced and celebrated. Here, held in the core of Carter's devotion, is where I was always meant to be, vibrant, drunk on the raptures of self-acceptance, and finally, blissfully, unfurled into the harmonics of forever.